Hello, hello. Welcome to this week's live Monday music motivation. It's been a couple weeks off, but I'm super glad that we are back to our regularly scheduled Monday music motivations. So, for today, I saw this really interesting TED Talk called The 6 Secrets to Learning, and I put a link to the full TED Talk in the description. You should definitely check it out. I think it was Lila Landowski was the presenter. Really, really good information, great stuff. If you've been watching me for the past few months, maybe 6 to 9 months now, you know that I've been really sort of going deep and nerding out about the science of learning, the science of practicing, all of that neuroscience and cognitive science stuff to make our practicing more efficient and productive. And this TED Talk was a great one on some sort of key things, and it really lined up a lot with the stuff that I've been learning, so I wanted to share that. And one of the components that I kind of had this inkling was very important and valuable, but could never quite articulate why very well, is the idea of making mistakes and how mistakes are actually sometimes our most powerful learning tool. And in this talk, she kind of talks about mistakes as a powerful learning tool, and it really clicked for me and made sense. So I wanted to sort of share that with you and see how you can apply making mistakes to your music learning and music practice to be more productive and more efficient and effective. Now, when it comes to making mistakes, there's sort of this thing that's at odds with each other, where we hear this kind of practice makes perfect, but that's not true. Actually, in fact, practice makes permanent. So perfect practice makes perfect. And then you kind of get in this loop of thinking like, well, if my brain's just getting better at doing whatever it's doing, then I need to do it as correctly as possible all the time so that I'm getting better at doing it correct, which is true and is important, and we want to do many, many more correct repetitions than repetitions with mistakes so that we kind of anchor in the right information. But on the other side, how is it possible to practice perfectly when you're starting from scratch on a piece, and how can you make it to where you never ever make a mistake? That seems totally impossible and almost like paralyzingly overwhelming to say, well, I can't practice and I can't play this if I'm going to make a mistake, or else I'll do it wrong and I'll program in the wrong information and I just can't do it. So at that point, you're better off just not practicing rather than practicing and making a mistake, which also, of course, definitely doesn't make sense. So we're kind of in this catch-22 between a rock and a hard place of how do I practice perfectly so I only learn exactly the correct information of how it goes while still actually practicing and not feeling overwhelmed by the idea that I'm never allowed to make a mistake. And I've also thought in playing and learning that mistakes are valuable, and you hear that mistakes can be valuable learning tools, and the whole like you'll only fail if you stop trying, and every failure is a learning opportunity, and all of those things. And you're like, well, that sounds well and good, but how does that actually apply to music specifically and the learning process? Well, in this TED Talk, I think she did a really good job of sort of explaining the mistakes, and I'll kind of translate all the fancy stuff into really applying it to playing music specifically and your music practice. So what she talks about in the TED Talk about mistakes is that when we make a mistake, we release neuromodulators. It's a fancy science term, which I don't really understand what that means, but it's some kind of brain chemical. And the way that it made sense to me and the way that I interpret it is it's kind of that red flag that goes off. Like, oh, that was wrong. That's those neuromodulators being released. And again, I don't know all the science behind it, but just by the name of neuromodulator, kind of makes it sound like those hormones and those things that are being released are going to help you to modulate, to change, to adjust your sort of brain wiring and all those synapses to learn to do it better. So I think the neuromodulators are actually good for retraining and relearning and developing something new. So in that way, mistakes are really helpful. There's another way that the mistakes are very helpful also, which is that it captures our attention a little bit better. So one of the key, very important things for learning, and she talks about this in the thing too, is we have to have good attention and good alertness to what we're doing. Have you ever played like your concert B flat scale, and you can play through it, or the chromatic scale is another good example where you can just kind of play through it without thinking about it at all, fully on autopilot, which is great. That's what we want to be able to do in a performance. But when you do it fully on autopilot, you're not learning anything. You're retrieving the information, which is good, and being able to retrieve it is good, but you aren't actually learning anything new by doing something on autopilot. It's just like if I'm wearing this shirt and I'm not thinking about feeling the shirt, I'm not feeling the shirt. Sure, those nerves and stuff are in contact with the shirt and they're there, but the brain starts to just block out those signals and ignores that I'm wearing a shirt. If I bring my attention to the fact that I'm wearing a shirt and can kind of feel the shirt on my body, okay, now I can feel it again because I have attention and awareness to it. So that's an example where in order to learn, we need to have attention and awareness and be focused on whatever we're doing. And when we make a mistake, that little red flag that goes, oh, that was a mistake, that helps to bring our attention back to it and releases those neuromodulators, which say like, oh, hey, pay attention to this, and oh, maybe that's not the way we want to do it. So let's make adjustments and figure out how to do it better and actually learn. And that's the real key to this, is it's through mistakes is where learning actually happens. There's also another kind of deliberate practice approach to this that you can see also, where if you make a mistake and you take a second to reflect on that mistake and then plan on how to do it better and then solve that problem, then you learn something very valuable. You learn how to fix that mistake and how you can fix that mistake in the future, which is super valuable for the sort of playing process and developing and growing as a musician. So mistakes overall are very, very valuable, from keeping your brain engaged so that you're still learning and staying focused and not just letting the information kind of wash over, releasing those neuromodulators so that your brain can actually rewire and make sure that it's wired to do what you want it to do, and to give you kind of long-term lasting ideas and frameworks and templates for how to fix similar problems in the future. So you don't have to be afraid about making mistakes. There's just one important thing that you have to do. Is super, super important. You have to notice the mistakes and you have to stop and fix the mistakes. It's when you make a mistake and just kind of keep going or don't realize it's a mistake, that's when you start programming it in. Because remember, the subconscious and all that brain part that's doing the programming and moving the information into long-term memory, it doesn't know if that note is supposed to be an F natural or an F sharp. It's up to you consciously to audiate through the music and know what you're aiming for and hear how it's supposed to go to know if that should be an F natural or an F sharp, so that you make sure that you're programming the right stuff in. And that's where mistakes are dangerous, is when you're mindlessly going through and just programming in whatever happens to come out of the instrument. But as long as you have a really clear idea of what you're aiming for, how you want it to go, you're being mindful and listening to how it's actually going, and then catching those mistakes and having that red flag go, oh, that was an F natural and it's supposed to be an F sharp. Stop, reflect. Why did I play an F natural instead of an F sharp? Okay, it should be an F sharp. Go back, fix it. That's where learning happens, and that's how we should be working in our practice. So let me know if you have any questions about that. Hopefully that was a helpful idea for you, and you can see why those mistakes are valuable. There's 5 other secrets to learning in the TED Talk in the description below, which you can check out. And of course, last but not least, we need to fill out our practice template. Here's what mine looks like. You can go to quickstartclarinet.com/get started to download it, or just create this for yourself on a notebook or your practice journal, or however you organize your life. Date for the week, reflection of how things are going, goal for what you want to accomplish this week, and then your plan for when you're going to practice, what you're going to practice. I'm going to be playing at Clarinet Fest in Dallas at the beginning of July, and I'm going to be playing a piece that I wrote. And I performed the piece once before last fall for kind of the premiere performance of it, but there was a bunch of stuff I was unhappy with, so I'm going back and revising it, relearning it, doing all that fun stuff, which I'm really looking forward to and really focused on this week. So find whatever you want to focus on, enjoy your mistakes, but be aware of your mistakes and have those kind of alarm bells going off to keep your brain engaged, to fix those mistakes, to program in the correct information. Even after you made a mistake, you can still program in the right thing as long as you catch it and you're paying attention. So let me know if you have any questions about anything. Fill out your practice template, put it in your calendar, get your practice scheduled and organized for this week. Have a fantastic week of practicing, and I will see you next week on the next live Monday Music Motivation. Have